Hey there, and thank you for joining us on the Designated Pundits. Today we are previewing the Chicago Fire's 2025 Major League Soccer season. Here with MLS broadcaster Alex Campbell. You know what we're doing. 30 Major League Soccer teams, 30 Major League Soccer previews. I think this is number 20. I think this might be the nice round 2-0, going in order of completed roster to incompleted roster, although we could really give you guys probably till 2026 or 7.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a rebuild, right? And thanks for the intro, MLS broadcaster. That's I think a little above my pay grade, but I'll take it as a description. Yeah, good to be back. Always enjoy these, and every year throughout this morass of the last decade, roughly, that has been the Chicago Fire. There's reasons of why this year might be better. That list, I think, is a little bit longer this year, and if it's not longer, the odds feel a bit better. So yeah, excited to talk about why, at least in some ways, this year is going to be different than the last several.
Absolutely. But before we get into this season, make sure you go to hit that bell icon. Make sure you get notified every time I go live. Subscribe to the Designated Pundits on your favorite audio podcast platform. All the major ones, you can find us there, or youtube.com/at the Designated Pundits. The DesignatedPundits.com is going to help us bring videos like this to you each and every week, or in this case, 30 in 30 days. Let's first recap the 2024 season. I'm sorry, we do have to do this.
That's understandable. I mean, we got to see where we're starting from here.
7-9-18 record with a 5-4-8 home, 2-5-10 away. 40 goals scored, 62 goals conceded. That's a few too many conceded, but far too many not scored. Minus 22 goal differential. Last place in the East. Missed the playoffs by 10 points. Not the worst team in the league by far. Actually, I was previewing the Quakes, so you guys do have room to to grow for sure. But a lot changed this offseason. There's a lot to feel a little better about. But first, 2024, what went wrong, and can you recap the season for us?
2024, what went wrong? I mean, again, because it feels like everybody makes the playoffs in MLS, the Fire were in it with a chance until pretty late in the year, and then they lost like their last 4 in a row, and that's how you get the finishing in last place in the 10-point gap. I think, if we look at the highlights of last season, or not highlights, I guess, notable points, kind of felt like the team was in cruise control the whole year. Frank Klopas was still the head coach, but felt like a pretty clear lame duck. They finally got out from under the albatross of the Xherdan Shaqiri contract. That happened mid-season. He was not immediately replaced because the team wasn't very good. Why would you? And also, with the knowledge there was going to be a lot of sporting department change in the offseason, you weren't going to sign any designated players at that stage. The end of the season did finally see the exit of Georg Heitz, who's been the sporting director in Chicago for the last several years. He is going to work more closely with Lugano in Switzerland, the Fire sister club. But, I think he still has some sort of consultation role. But yeah, I think last season was in a lot of ways a forgotten year. The best thing that happened was Ugo Kuipers scored double-digit goals in MLS despite getting almost no service whatsoever. So that was a big addition. Is you got the contributors there. Brian Gutierrez was good at times, but maybe didn't make the leap a lot of Fire fans were hoping for. And you get the rest of the list there. Marin Haile Selassie is a guy who's a pretty consistent MLS level player, but then when Acosta and Herbers are coming up on the goal scoring contribution list, those aren't guys who are supposed to be doing that. And so
I usually cut the graphic off at 3 total contributions, but I needed to get Shaqiri on there just to show, exactly what he had going on. I mean, there's nothing going on here. However, I do have to say, Kuipers, as some players from Belgium do, take a little while. Not everyone's going to be a Jeremy Paintsil. Some people look more like Dante Van Zier for a few years. That's okay. I think that he passed the eye test for me. Like, if you drop him on any other squad, if you drop him on either LA squad, I think that he's a 25 goal scorer and that there's no question about that.
No, so he's that guy. He's great on the end of stuff. He was worth $15 million, which is the transfer fee the Fire paid to bring him in from Belgium. So no, I don't think anybody questions that that was a bad signing. I think the hope is he's going to get a lot more service this year because the Fire certainly believe he's a 20-goal scorer.
I believe that too. Brian Gutierrez, I believe that he is a 10 and 10 guy, in some future alternate universe here too. And you guys got Greg Berhalter now. I love Greg Berhalter. I know a lot of people love to hate Greg Berhalter, but I've always admired what he did. He shows the ability to make tough decisions. And when he was coach of the men's national team, while some of the results were varied, we won every international. Everyone wanted to play for him. Everyone who had dual citizenship came and played for the United States. He made that team the cool kids again. And I think that when we look back at this like wonder generation, no matter how much they succeed or fail, you need to kind of credit, Greg Berhalter for kind of being the architect of that. And now he takes over as head coach and like CSO. Like he has way too much control. He's getting the Bruce Arena treatment, if you will. And, he took over the worst team in the East, and he can't play. He can't possibly get as bad a result. I don't see Chicago finishing in the bottom two again, maybe bottom three. Some things need to go right, but I do think that they're on the right path. And if you look at coaching decisions in Major League Soccer, there's been a lot of really good coaches and really good systems that kind of make up for the lack of some of their players. So if Berhalter can coach some of these guys up, you might be talking about Brian Gutierrez or Hugo Kuipers as, being that top tier MLS talent. Do you guys kind of see it the same way?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, this was the most obvious thing in the world after Berhalter was fired by the U.S. He lives here in Chicago, has for his entire tenure. There were links to Club America. You can take Berhalter at his word or not, but his explanation for one of the reasons he chose to fire over that job was his daughter is a junior or senior in high school, and he didn't want to move her while she was still in school. Again, you can take that as a convenient explanation, or you can take him at face value that was something that was really, really high on the priority list for him. Definitely concerns about how much power he's got as both the coach and the sporting director. But if you're the Fire, I think you were in a position where you wanted Berhalter. Berhalter was at least somewhat interested from the jump. And so you give him what he wants to a degree. And again, is that a lot of control? Yes. If things go poorly, are you stuck and going from square one again someday? Yes. But I think you make a really good point on the dual national recruitment, because he's a guy who can sell a project. And certainly this is going to be a work in progress for a couple of years, and getting guys on big wages or guys who want to win sold on that right away. It's not an easy thing to do. He's a coach, especially with the way he likes to play, requires buy-in from the jump, and he's good at getting it. So I think, again, is it a bit of a risk to give him that much power? Absolutely. I still think it was the obvious slam dunk thing to do. And, if this season does not go well, I don't think you're going to be able to go back and say, oh, if they had hired somebody other than Berhalter, it would have gone better. Yeah. I don't see that being the reason if things don't go well.
No risk it, no biscuit, as they say. But people will love to blame Greg Berhalter for anything and everything. Every loss is going to be solely on his shoulders, and every win is going to be despite him being there, to certain segments of the social medias. Let's look at some roster turnover. Now, you had a lot of incoming, outgoing players. I tried to kind of highlight the ones I thought of the most. Rafael Chichos, Wyatt Omsberg, Tobias Sahlquist in the defense. Then you have Ariel Lassiter, Fabian Hebers, Gaston Jimenez, Federico Navarro, and George Koutsias, all out in midfield and forward position. And then coming in, you get Philip Zinker-Nagel, who I think is going to be a right winger, Sam Rogers, Leonardo Barroso in defense, Jonathan Bamba, your big DP wing signing, and you're going to have that Romanigue?
I think it's Romanier Kouame. I think is what we're going with.
Sure, I'll let you pronounce it every time we talk about it.
I'm sure we'll get a pronunciation guide explanation. He has not arrived in camp yet out in Southern California, to my knowledge. So I think that's kind of still up in the air. But Yeah, I mean, the center back room cleared out. The Fire, I mean, have basically totally revamped that. Carlos Terran is really the only consistent starter at center back who's even still on the team. Mauricio Pineda might play there a little bit too. And then, you look at that midfield group. Fede Navarro was a U22 signing. He's been a solid player. I think Berhalter would have liked him, but he got married recently. He had expressed wanting to be back closer to family in South America. He gets the move to Rosario Central down in Argentina. Gaston Jimenez, you could argue, was a worse contract than Jordan Shaqiri, given the roster headaches it caused, given that he was a DP at times and just on a lot of money and
Sure.
was pretty much a bust. I mean, he had some redeeming qualities, but not at the price he was
So then
making.
I have to ask you the question: is there
Yeah.
anyone in this outgoing roster that you liked?
Federico Navarro, I'm sad to see go. I think because he's a guy who's going to cover a lot of ground, kind of a destroyer type. I think he would have been really valuable to Berhalter and would mean a guy like Kellen Acosta would have to worry about defense a little less. And I think Yurios Koutsias is a really promising young player. He's a Greek under 21 international, but I know just had never really made the jump. He's now with Lugano. The Fire freed up both a U22 spot and an international spot with him moving off the roster. So for that, it was worth it. And then the new guys, obviously Bamba's the headliner. The Fire got him for something like only like 2 million up front with maybe some add-ons. This is a guy who 18 months ago was transferred for 20 million euros from Lille in France to Celta Vigo in Spain. He was part of that Lille team that won that surprise Ligue 1 title a few years back. So this is a guy who has done it at a high level. And I mean, given that the transfer fee was low, I'm sure his wages are going to be very high, probably not Shaqiri high, but he's going to be getting paid well. And then Philip Zinkernagel, who's a guy who his most of his career has come, at least the best of it, in Norway with Bodo Glimt, who have kind of dominated the Norwegian league in recent years. He's played in Denmark as well. He kind of projects as just a really solid starting level guy. Most likely, to your point, he ends up on the right because Bamba is more comfortable off the left with Kuipers through the middle. And then, as I mentioned, the center backs all went out, which means they had to bring a bunch of center backs in. Jack
So let's
Elliott
talk about that. Let's start from the
is a big
back.
one.
I have Jack Elliott and Carlos Terran with Sam Rogers behind him. That's kind of how I see them. Is there anyone else in the mix here?
I think that is your default starting lineup. I mean, Sam Rogers hasn't played much soccer the last couple of years, so I think the Fire kind of got to wait and see what exactly he is
Sure.
right now. I mean, and I won't be surprised if it takes him a couple months before they feel he's comfortable. Pineda can play there. He's not who you ideally want to play there, but the thing about Mauricio Pineda is he'll give you a 6 out of 10 at a bunch of different spots, but an 8 out of 10 at none of them. But then, to continue in the back, I'm really excited about Leonardo Barroso at right back. He is a Sporting Club de Portugal youth product. He is a Portuguese youth international. He's thought very highly of there. We got our first look at him in a preseason friendly against LAFC yesterday, and he's not a big guy, but he was not afraid of Denny Bouanga, who he was up against in that game. And I think, right back's been a problem for years for this team. And you don't want to put too much pressure on a 19-year-old, but I think all the pedigree, everything says he's a really talented kid. And I think if he develops well and Andrew Gutman on the left can stay healthy, you're going to get a lot of production out of the fullback spots, which is huge and something the Fire have not had at all.
So what are they actually responsible for here? Are they expected to get upfield? We know Gutman from his time with Red Bull and from Atlanta likes to, wander from home to the positive and to the negative. Getting caught out of position is not a shocking situation for him by any means. Are they going to be expected to get forward?
Gutman's naturally going to get forward. I mean, so the plan last year, which fell apart because Gutman got hurt twice immediately, was that they were going to have basically Gutman be the far left width in attack, and then you'd have Guti and Shaqiri as dual tens either side of Kuipers with Marin Haile Selassie the right width. Made a lot of sense to everybody, felt like a good setup. They scored some goals in preseason, and then Gutman gets hurt, and basically, and Frank Klopas admitted this later in the year, when that happened, the entire system fell apart. So Gutman wants to get forward. Barroso, tough to tell. Given that Gutman likes to get forward so much, I think he's going to be asked to play a bit more defensively. But on the same token, with Gutman being the much more veteran of the two, I think Gutman is going to probably have more responsibility to be told, hey, if you see that Leandro is just way where he should not be, you got to be the guy who gets back and covers that space, even if it's not where you want to be. It also depends on the wingers. Is Bamba going to be a guy who wants to get his, boots chalky, or is he a guy who's going to want to be cutting in on that right foot a lot? I'm not familiar enough with his game to be confident. So we're going to just have to see. Those are going to be the starting fullbacks, but no, I'm curious how they're going to end up being deployed.
Love it. So there are a few errors on the depth chart. As you see, Omsberg is going to be out. Soquet looks out. That's going to be Jonathan Dean behind him. Everything else is kind of speculation for the midfield at this point because we really don't know what they do have. So let's move up, from the back line to the midfield. Looks like we have like a traditional 10-8-6 kind of thing going on here with a new signing, Kwame, with Kellen Acosta behind him. On the other side, Mauricio Pineda and Brian Gutierrez up top. Is that how you see things? Let's talk about how each one of these positions is going to affect the field here.
Yeah, so hard to know if they're going to settle more on a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3. I think with Kouame, I think you might see a situation where they play double pivot with him and Kellen Acosta and Guti ahead of them. Although what we saw yesterday was a 4-3-3 with Brian Gutierrez playing as the left-sided 8 and being the more advanced of the two 8s. Sergio Orejel, a younger guy, 19-year-old who's a U20 U.S. international, was the right 8 and was very much the 8 in that 6-8-10 combo. It was very much Acosta's the lone 6, Orejel's the 8, Guti's the 10. I kind of want to see that setup because Guti trying to be a pure 10 it really hasn't taken that leap. And I think he's at a point where he's either got to be a left wing who drifts in field or he's got to be an attacking 8. I think the attacking 8 is the better choice of the two. I think him and Acosta are locked in. The question is Kouame a guy who's going to come in and start? And if he does, do him or Acosta play deeper? Is it a chance for a kid like Orejel to come in and claim that position? Do they want to be more careful and play Pineda deep? I think you're going to see a lot of playing around with this, mostly with who that third piece is with Acosta and Gutierrez, and depending on who it is, how those players complement each other. Guti will always be the most advanced of the three, but it's where is he doing that from? That's going to be a question.
I have projected on left wing, Jonathan Bamba. Behind him, Haile Selassie. On the outside, Philip Zinkernagel. You could have Orgel behind him. You could have Haile Selassie behind him too. Wings. Do you guys have like shooting wings, or are they expected to get goals or just assists? How do they affect the lineup? And then we are best for each left and right.
Yeah, so this is the biggest question mark on the roster because these guys are going to both start if they're healthy.
The biggest good question mark, right?
Yeah, no, and they're both new though. The upside of the question mark is high. The floor feels low here. Last year they were playing. Haile Selassie started just about every game, and then the other wing was you saw a lot of Chris Mueller. You saw Brian Gutierrez playing out there sometimes. It just they never really got the right balance. I think because Bamba is like the high profile guy, you're going to kind of figure out in Berhalter's system, is he more comfortable on the left or is he more comfortable on the right? This to make a U.S. comparison, it's like Christian Pulisic, who with the U.S. was often deployed on the left to cut in on his right foot, but we've seen at club level in the right system, he's actually probably better on the right. So Bamba's a guy, which one of those roles does he fill better? Zinkernagel, from what we can tell of him so far, I think is comfortable on either wing. And then, right now, Haile Selassie and Mueller probably are the depth options, but the Fire keep getting linked to more wingers, so they might not be done there yet if Berhalter is not satisfied with the depth options. But it's exciting. I mean, these are new signings. Zinkernagel's not expected to light the world on fire. He's just supposed to be a really solid pro. Bamba's the X factor though. If Bamba can hit the levels he's capable of, the Fire go from a team that where are they finishing in the bottom half to probably a playoff team. Are they able to get any higher than say sixth? Like that's what we're talking about, a team who averages out to probably about 10th if he's just okay, but a team that's going to be fighting maybe for top 5 or 6 in the East if he's really good.
Yeah, I think Jonathan Bamba should be, a great player if he's healthy. I just was looking at Transfer Market, and I get knocked for using Transfer Market on the show all the time in the comments. But they're interviewing MLS GMs, and they're like, oh, well, on Transfer Market, like, oh, okay, everyone uses this. This is, he went from 25 million to $2 million valuation. That's a $21 million dip in 2 years. So either scouts were very, very, very wrong, or he's got a little extra juice in the tank that might just take the right situation to bring out. So I definitely think.
I think what happened there is Lille was able to sell everybody from that team at a premium because they had just beat PSG and they were like, hey, look at how good all our players are. Give us money. 20 million is a lot of money for Celta Vigo. I don't really know what they were doing there, even if Bamba was good, because also they've been just a mess. If you're a USMNT sicko like myself, you're familiar that Luca De La Torre has not had any fun there outside of eating octopus near the beach. That team has been kind of a mess. So I think, to your point, the Fire are going to be hoping that, that was just a bad situation. We're getting him out of that bad situation, and hopefully he can, find some joy back in it with the freedom he's going to be afforded in this team.
And Kuiper's up top. I love that. Barlow up top. I hate that. So he got
Correct.
a couple guys there. Behind him, I have Bolts. Is that the guy's name?
Yeah, Bolts is a kid. They've got, Misael Rodriguez is still hanging around. Victor Becerra is still hanging around. Barlow is the backup right now. A coach like Berhalter likes a guy like Barlow because he will run his ass off and press. He's not going to give you anything, though, on the ball. So if the Fire need another goal, who is the backup 9? They don't really have one right now. That's, I think, kind of a wide open spot on this team. So, I mean, again, not to put more pressure on Kuipers, but he's the man. If they lose him, they would have to throw out everything and just figure out how to rework it without him, because it would look entirely different.
So I have some questions here. These are storylines to follow. I pose them as questions, but some of them are going to have any answers, just discussion points. And my first one is, how long is Berhalter's leash in Chicago? He has a lot of power, and sometimes that can go downhill really quickly. I think that, Chicago invested. This is a project, and they know they're not going to get results right away. But no one likes to be a bad team for 15 years in a row either. So
I mean, so I think his leash is extremely long. I think it would have to go really, really bad, really, really quickly for him to be here 2 years or less. The club is also on the brink of hopefully announcing some stadium plans. And so I think they'd like some continuity while all that is going on. Sure. There also might be a little less money for transfers while all that is going on. So I think ideally they would like, in a perfect world, Berhalter to build a project so that when they are moving into a new stadium, they are at a point where they are a top-end competitive team. I think that is kind of the vision here. So I think his leash is extremely long. I think he basically gets, this year's a free pass, basically. You can't do worse, so just make us look interesting. And then depending on how this year goes, will dictate how much pressure year 2 brings with it. If they were to miss the playoffs the next 2 seasons, then I think maybe you see some alarm bells ringing. But again, he's his own boss to a degree. So unless ownership really has a problem with him, he's not going anywhere.
Love it. Any rumors on bringing in a third DP now? Chicago is notoriously barren for rumors in the offseason, although Bamba was, out and about for a while. That was the biggest story in soccer for about a week. Any idea if there's a third player coming, or if there's anything right now in the works that might make the show obsolete in a week?
No, there's no expectation that they're going to bring a third DP in this window. I guess I have to address the elephant in the room, which was that Neymar chase, which was simply a thing they tried. Like, they never thought that was going to happen, but like, the opportunity was there. They can pay just as much, if not more, than whatever Neymar took to go back to Santos.
It would be silly not to knock on that door.
No, again,
you have to do your due diligence.
Yeah, Neymar's agent picked up the phone. And like there was a discussion with Neymar's dad and Neymar's agent and Berhalter and Mansueto. That happened. It never got further than that. I would assume that the money involved didn't make sense. But no, I mean, Joe Mansueto's got money. He's willing to throw it around, and so the Fire got themselves into that conversation. No, the expectation is they will fill the third DP spot in the summer. Of course, MLS teams have to declare by the roster compliance date, which is, I believe, February 21st, whether they're going to go for the 2 DP 4 U22 setup or the 3 and 3. Right now, the Fire have a ton of flexibility because their only U22 players on the roster are Gutierrez is one, and I don't know if Barroso was signed as one because Kutias was one, he's gone. Federico Navarro was one, he's gone. So the Fire have a ton of roster flexibility. Given that they're not up against it on U22s, my expectation is they declare the 3 and 3 model, and that depending on how the first half of the year goes, they are doing probably big shopping because the vibe still feels like Baum is a big name, but they got him for such a low number at that 2 million. The feeling
It
still
shows
is
ambition without wasted capital, right?
right. The feeling is they want to take a big swing, like Kuipers or bigger is. So I think in the summer they're going to go out and they're going to try to sign probably either a 10 or a winger type, just another attacker, and the understanding is they're willing to spend a lot of money on it. I mean, they just got a very nice windfall from the John Duran sell on. That total fee is now up at like 30 million for the Fire in total. So hello, more GAM, hello, more cash for the club. So no, the money's there. It's willing to be spent. So no, summer for that third DP.
Next question. I pulled the graphics down a little bit outdated. I made those a little bit earlier last week. The next question was going to be, what do you think is the biggest hole right now on the roster? For me, it's got to be midfield, right?
In midfield depth. I mean, you don't know who your starting 8 is right now, or 6, whoever that third midfielder is. So yeah, that's the biggest question right now. Midfield depth. And who's the third starter there? That you feel at least okay at the other 10 spots right now, I think, at least in the starting 11. But yeah, whoever completes the midfield is a big old question mark right now. And again, maybe it's Kouame, maybe it's one of the kids, maybe there's another signing that's still coming. But I think also, even though DP money isn't spent there's an argument that maybe if the right player's available, you go spend DP money on an 8 if you feel like that's the missing piece. San Diego are going to go do it for Kevin De Bruyne this summer, or at least that's their plan. So, is there somebody younger, but somebody who can come in and who's worth the money in a box-to-box midfield role? Again, we're going to have to wait and see. The Fire are going to make these judgments based on how the season is going. If they feel like, the midfield's okay, but they need more firepower, Zinkernagel's the guy you probably try to upgrade on, maybe even Gutierrez, depending on how he's progressing. So, yeah, I think the midfield, I would like to see at least one more signing before things shut up shop.
Sure.
to feel good about it. At the same time, I'm somebody who has bemoaned the fact that these kids the Fire keeps signing don't get any minutes. I mean, none of these guys get minutes at MLS level, despite the fact that the Fire have been bad. And so I think Sergio Orejel is a guy, the youth national teams, especially when Berhalter was head coach of the senior team, have always thought very highly of Sergio Orejel, and then that just did not seem to be reciprocated here in Chicago. So I think there's every chance that he's going to be given an opportunity, as are some other kids, because Berhalter is going to be just more willing to give it a shot and play these kids than the Fire have been in recent years.
For me, it's also left back. I mean, I saw the Gutman
Gutman's injury record
on Red Bull, and he's an injury risk. And to me, I think I know what his max is. I think I know his best play, and it's league average. So for a league average team, that's fine. But I think that's a position that I'd want to move up a little bit onto. Last story, Chris Mueller. the darling of MLS's back tournament when he was playing with Orlando, flashed real hot, and he was on the depth chart for me. And then I was told, no, take him off.
Yeah, so I think right now he's a backup winger. I think right now he would be the backup at left wing. I won't be surprised if Chris Mueller is not still with this team in 3 weeks. I think there's a couple ways that can happen. The Fire are a team that has liked to use the buyouts on players. And now they can do it twice. The assumption is Arno Suke is going to be one of those as soon as they can figure out some sort of, amenable situation, because if they were just willing to cut him loose, they would have done it by now, because they don't really need to ask him about it. But he's gone. And then, Mueller is somebody who, makes decent money and has not produced very much. Again, his star burned very bright. That trip to Scotland didn't go very well. It seemed like a really good signing at the time. Like I was a big fan of that signing when the Fire brought him in mid-season. It just hasn't worked. And if you're hunting for higher quality wingers and then the depth starts to be a little too much, I think Mueller's a guy who's probably on the trade market in the league for a team who's really short in that department. And if he stays, I think his minutes will be limited unless there's injuries.
Love it. Let's now get into the prediction phase. And these first three questions are connected. What's a realistic season outcome? What's the team's best possible outcome? And what's the team's worst possible outcome? For me, the worst possible outcome is last place in the East. I think that is
this team is cursed. The worst possible outcome is this team is literally cursed and nothing you can do will change it.
Best possible outcome is not the players. Best possible outcome is Greg Berhalter shows everyone why he's the man and can get something out of this team. I don't think changing a head coach, Wilfred Nancy, there's others around the league. Sandro Schwartz, Red Bull. We haven't talked yet about Bruce Arena with San Jose. These are guys who can be elevating a team just with their own appearance. I think that this could be a sixth place team, which would be over the play-in round. So solid in the playoffs by 2 or 3 points by the skin of their teeth. I think that is the top end possibility for the squad.
Yeah, because if you just go through the Eastern Conference and you start doing the math, Miami, Atlanta should be a lot better this year. They better be, with how much money they just spent on a 9 and a 10. Miguel Marone back as part of that. And then after those two, it's kind of a big old question mark. Philly looks down. The Red Bulls run hot and cold. New York City is never as good as they should be. DC is going to be bad. Trying to think who else I'm forgetting.
Toronto's going to be bad.
Toronto's going to be bad. Montreal's going to be bad.
Charlotte's going to be good. Orlando's going to be good. I would say Red Bulls are going to be good. That's my team.
Montreal's going to be fun bad. I think though. I think they're going to be bad, but I think they will be fun bad. Versus, I think Toronto and DC United are going to be an absolute terror to watch. I think it's going to be just no fun at all there. So no, I'm with you. I think the Fire's that's the top. And then realistic, it's broken record here. Make the playoffs. I mean, if I had to bet what place the Fire finish in this year, I'd say 8th. You got to make the playoffs. It's even with this team, this roster is, with its flaws, this roster is at least the 9th best roster in the Eastern Conference. Again, when you look at, DC, Toronto are going to really struggle. Montreal is going to struggle. Philly might be going full rebuild and might be pretty bad this year. Of course, I forgot the Ohio teams earlier. So if you go Miami, Atlanta, Charlotte, the Ohios, Orlando Red Bull.
Well, we don't know what the Ohios are packing either. I mean, they both lost some very big pieces.
The Crew need to figure out who's scoring goals, because now the Crew are a very good back 8 team. And then it's what are you doing up front? Because
they're Charlotte last year.
You're right. That's what they are. They are last year Charlotte. It's wow, that's a nice defense in midfield you've got. You have no strikers. What's up? So no, I mean, again, I just named 7 teams. So 8th kind of feels like the target, I think. Plus or minus, again, MLS is weird, but this team, Kuipers with better wingers. Forget everything else. You've got Kuipers with better wingers. That should produce enough goals to get you into the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. I think that should be a goal. Not that it's set in stone. And the last one was what's the biggest storyline for this year? And I'll answer. Biggest storyline for me, Greg Berhalter. What can he do? What does he bring in? And if the team is winning or in a mid-tier position in the summer, what does that look like? And then if they're in a bottom tier position, what does that look like? So those are kind of my storylines for the year. Anything that you have?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of on the Berhalter point. Yeah, story one is Greg Berhalter the thing this team needed to finally break out of this 8-year funk? Like that's question number one. Can he, even if it's just being a new face and being somebody outside the team, new set of eyes, all that jazz. Does that plus the brand new training center they just opened and the morale that's going to boost, and maybe stadium plans and good vibes, and maybe you can win a couple of games. Does all of that collectively just kind of lift the mood, and thus everybody's a little happier and the play's a little better and that sort of thing? I think the second one is Brian Gutierrez. It is make or break time for that kid. Either Berhalter is going to be able to get him to play better than he's played the last couple of years, and he is going to become a top level MLS player and a guy on the fringes of the national team, or he's not.
And you're going to have that information in one way or another.
Right. We're going to know at the end of this year, either he's going to be a solid MLS player for his entire career, and there is nothing wrong with that. Like, I'm not going to knock anybody for making 6 figures and playing, 10 or 15 years of pro soccer. Sounds great. I really think that's his floor. I mean, it's what he's right now, is a solid MLS player. No, but the ceiling is he's a guy who you sell the year up for $5 million. And there's a world where at the end of the year, that's what happens. That's absolutely in play. And so, yeah, I think in terms of from a player perspective, yeah, it's kind of put up or shut up time there. And again, I don't mean that as like some knock on Brian. It's just kind of his age, his profile, and the realities of national team soccer and all of that. This is, if he's going to do it, he has to do it this year.
I agree. Some really, really good stuff there. Alex, let's bring this to a close. Let us know where we can find your work.
So I'm at A Campbell Sports on all of your favorite social media platforms. CHGO Fire should be firing back up here in a couple of weeks on the podcast front. So follow that wherever you get your podcast. I'm also on Substack. It's just alexcampbell.substack.com, where I'm hopefully going to be doing some more writing. So I'm excited about that. Also, just want to plug on the Fire front, people, if you're not familiar with them, who you need to be following. Joe Chats over at On Tap Sports. He's arguably the only real beat writer day-to-day that this team has right now. And then the guys from Men in Red 97. So Alex Calabrese, Tim Hotsey, Matt Schabelman and co. They are trying to do a full independent media operation covering the Fire. That is hard to do in MLS. We've seen a few teams try it. I know there's a big new project in Nashville that's super exciting. So yeah, support local media, follow those guys, support their work. Because I mean, I'm kind of just I'm still in the media orbit of the Fire, but I feel like I'm a bit grandfathered in because I'm kind of the only guy who was around pre-COVID who is still here a lot. So it's one of those situations where I'm just happy to still be a part of it, but there's people spending a lot more of their time on it and doing it as their main thing than me. So yeah, go seek those guys out.
Awesome. And talk about Nashville, 3:00 on Saturday at Eastern time. You can find us with Wes Bowling from Club and Country as we go over some Nashville stuff. It's going to be a great show. Thank you, Alex, for taking the time out to be with us here tonight. We'll have to have you on again real soon. We should schedule a time like 3 months from now. Let's talk about how the first 10 games went. Let's get after it. It was great seeing you again. Have a good weekend. And thank you, Evan, for checking into the Designated Pundits. Make sure you check out all 30 Major League Soccer team previews. Have a great one.